AITA for paying for my own dinner and refusing to drink on a first date with a guy? About a year ago, I, 24F, went on a date with a guy, 26M, who I had met through a mutual friend. We had both been chatting casually for a bit after our introduction and hit it off enough over text that when he suggested meeting up for dinner, I agreed. We were both in graduate school at the time, so it seemed like we had some common ground. I was looking forward to it, thinking it could be a fun night out or at least a chance to meet someone new. The moment we got to the restaurant, though, the vibe felt off. I had been to the place before and always loved it, good atmosphere, great food, but something just didn't sit right with me that night. The guy was overly focused on making a big show of being gentlemanly, which, don't get me wrong, is usually a nice gesture. But his approach felt performative and forced. He kept bringing up how expensive the restaurant was, which made me uncomfortable because I hadn't suggested it. He had. Then he suggested we order a bottle of wine. I've never been into drinking and mentioned to him that I don't drink at all. He brushed that off and tried to nudge me into loosening up by having just one drink, but I stuck to my decision and ordered water. As the dinner went on, his irritation became more obvious. He kept making little jokes about how I was a buzzkill and how the evening would have been more fun if I just joined him in having a drink. I couldn't shake the awkwardness. It felt like I wasn't being respected for my choices. He ordered a sirloin and I got a New York strip, but by the end of the meal, I had already decided that I was going to cover my own bill. The entire dinner had been so uncomfortable, and I didn't want to feel indebted to him in any way, especially after how much pressure he had been putting on me throughout the evening. On top of that, my steak was more expensive than his, so it seemed only fair that I take responsibility for what I ordered. When the waitress came over to drop off the check, I asked for separate bills. I thought it was the most straightforward way to handle the situation, but the look on his face was priceless. He was clearly annoyed and asked me why I wouldn't just let him pay, saying I was ruining his chance to be a gentleman. I explained that I felt more comfortable paying for myself given how the night had gone. I thought it was fair since I had made my own choices, especially when it came to ordering dinner. Later that night, after we parted ways, he sent me a text saying I had been rude for not letting him cover the bill, and he told me I was being cold for refusing to have a drink with him. At that point, I was done with the situation. His behavior during the date had already put me off, and this text only solidified my feelings. I blocked his number the same day. Since then, we've never spoken again, and honestly, I've never felt any urge to reconnect. However, a few weeks ago, something happened that brought the whole situation back to mind. My current boyfriend, 28M, and I have been together for 6 months now, and we decided to go out to the same steakhouse for a nice evening together. I had an amazing time with him, and it was the complete opposite of that awkward first date. He was sweet and respectful the entire evening, offering to pay for everything, which I was happy to let him do. We had such a great night. He even had a couple of martinis, but unlike the first guy, there was no pressure for me to join him. He knows I don't drink and respects that without question. He opened the door for me, pulled out my chair, and made me feel appreciated, but without any of the uncomfortable, forced gestures that the other guy had done. What really got me thinking, though, was that we happened to have the same waitress I had during that first date. It was just a coincidence, but it reminded me of how different the two experiences were. I couldn't help but reflect on how I had refused to let that first guy pay for my meal and how I had felt so uncomfortable with the way things had gone. Yet with my boyfriend, I had no issue letting him treat me to dinner, and the night felt natural and enjoyable. This has made me wonder if there's a double standard in how I handled these situations. On one hand, I insisted on paying for my own meal during the first date because I didn't want to feel like I owed that guy anything, especially after he had pressured me so much throughout the evening. But with my boyfriend, I was perfectly content with him paying, and I didn't feel any discomfort at all about it. Now, I can't help but ask myself if that makes me the a-hole. It's been nagging at me since that night, and I'm wondering if the way I handled things on that first date was unfair, or if I was just responding to how uncomfortable the situation had made me. Does that make me an a-hole, or was I right to handle the first date the way I did?